Hey everyone, welcome back to Cosplay Sewing School. Today we are going to be learning how to take a pattern like this and get it into the computer. Let's get started. So what I'm going to do here is take a simple duct tape pattern, which is made off of my dress form. You can make these off your body. I know that Evil Ted, MeWe Cosplay, Punished Props, a ton of cosplayers are using these. And whether you're historical or a cosplayer or fantasy or whatnot, it's a really neat and fun trick on getting sort of patterns off your body parts. I'm just going to go ahead and use one of these. You can use drafted patterns in any way, shape, or form, or even copies that you've made off of other patterns that you have done a bunch of alterations to, and maybe you want to go ahead and use those, get those in as a digital pattern. All right, so here we go. So what I have here is my pattern is flat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this broken down into enough parts that it will fit easily onto my scanner. Now, I have a big scanner because I do a lot of patterns, but if you just have a letter size pattern, that's what we're going to go with here. So I have just a letter size piece of paper. And what I am going to do here is I'm just going to kind of manipulate my pattern to see where it would fit easiest onto this paper. So what I don't want to do is I have some darts here, and I'm going to be careful because it's just going to be easier to reassemble if I don't cut into those. So what I'm going to do is that's the edge of my paper there. I'm just going to take a line and I am going to draw. Now this is with a Sharpie so you guys can see it. You can do this with a pencil, whatever you like. And what I'm going to do here is then I'm going to put some marks on this that we can use to line it back together again. And then I'm also going to put some numbering on this. So I'm going to call this part 1 and this part 2. And this is also going to tell me which side is facing up. All right. Now, let's put the lid on that so I don't mark everything up. I am going to cut this apart. Oh no, I'm cutting it apart. Don't worry, we're going to put it back together in Adobe Illustrator. Okay, so we have piece 1. So this piece fits into the scanner. Now, let's go ahead and get part 2. So this will kind of technically fit into the scanner. I think I want to split it. So we're just going to split this again in half, 3 scans, no big deal. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to cut this, and we're going to cut that, and that's going to be our mark. Oh, let's make sure we put what number piece that is. Cut this apart. There we go. All right, so now we have 3 pattern pieces that fit into our scanner. Let's move over to the scanner and see how I'm going to scan these in. All right, let's go. Now I am in my office where my scanner is located, and I have my pattern pieces, and we are going to put these into the scanner. Now you can go ahead and use whichever scanner you have. I know I have a big scanner. Don't worry about it. Just any cheap scanner will do the job. So we're going to go ahead and take our pattern pieces and lay them face down into the scanner bed. Close the scanner bed and go ahead and run a scan. I'll show you all my settings when we head over to the computer. Here we are in Adobe Illustrator. I am going to go ahead and make a new file using a pretty big artboard here. While we wait for that to load, the next step is going to be to bring in those scans. So there's 2 ways we can do this. The first way is to just drag and drop the file onto the artboard. The other option is to go to File and click Place, where we can then shift select more than one item to put into here. So I just went ahead and grabbed that folder, and now I'm going to shift and hold both of those images and then click, click, and we have all of the items now onto the screen. The next thing we're going to do is clean up and rotate. So I'm just rotating that top piece, bringing the second piece somewhat in line, and that third piece, and that one needs flipped. So let's just hold shift, rotate, and bring that in. So the next step is to sort of mask and clean up so that we can align these. So what I'm going to do is click mask. And then what I'm going to do here is just bring that mask to kind of cover the bottom there. Double click to enter isolation mode. And now I'm going to rotate the object until I get it straight. I'm bringing a guide down so that I can see where that is. And I'm double clicking and making sure I have isolated that linked file each time. And I'm just rotating it ever so slightly until it looks really good. Now we're going to do the same thing to the top of this one. So I'm going to mask it, and then I'm going to double click, get into isolation mode, and start rotating. Oops, that guide is from the other layer. Going to have to bring in a new guide there. Okay, so now let's rotate this object. See how we're not there? There we go. We are in the linked file. Rotate that object, get it just nice and pretty, come on out, bring those objects together and start attempting to align them just using my arrow keys or my mouse, whatever works easiest for you. And I need to delete those grid lines or those guides, but we can't do that here. We need to do that in the isolated object because those are connected there. So we're just going to double click, go in there, select delete. All right, so now we can come in and zoom in and really narrow down because what we want to make sure is that this is still the same exact size as it was before. And so I need to bring that mask down. So I went ahead and said to isolate the mask. And here I am moving the object after I isolated it. And we're just seeing where is perfect on there. I'm just going to narrow this down using numeric values because the nudge is just a little big. There we go. Move it a little to the right and we've got it. Looks nice and clean to me. Almost there. Yep, there we go. Now going to go ahead and go out of isolation mode and look, we have a nice object back together. So I'm going to group these so there aren't any more whoopsies because sometimes, whoopsies. And go ahead and connect the third item the same way. Now this one, just need to make sure that this one is in front of the other one. And so that third piece, we're going to go ahead and do the exact same procedure as we did before. Okay, group the whole set. I went ahead and locked the layer with our original image so that we don't accidentally move that around and created a new layer that we're going to draw on top of. And let's just kind of straighten this up. Now that center front area, I kind of didn't cut it off very well off of the dress form. So that is not really properly straight. See, this is the thing with these duct tape patterns is when you bring them off, there's a lot of cleanup to do. So I don't trust that center front is straight. So I'm going to go ahead and make some grid lines and just, manipulate the object until it looks the way that I believe it should look from the body to the pattern here. And, you always want to make a mock-up anytime you do something like this, because when we go to flatten it and we transfer it and we move it around, there's always going to be some chances of things not 100% perfect. But this should get us 90 to 95% of the way there. So you want to always, like I said, print this, make a mock-up afterwards. All right, so I've got a grid kind of laid out using my guides. And here I've brought the pen tool. And now I'm just going to start on that straight front edge, holding shift so that I get that line straight. And I'm clicking to go ahead and start building around. Now, I am not worrying about any curves at this point in time. I'm just kind of getting in the basic outline, bringing that out because that is a dart. So you need a little extra fabric there and just going around. Okay, so we have now finished that outline. I'm just going to go ahead and give it a stroke and give it a little bit thick, probably a 3, and change it to orange just so it's easy to see because we have that blue back there. And so now we're going to go ahead and zoom in and we're going to start manipulating these points. So
A will get us into the tool where we can select single points. So we're going to click A, click that point. Now I'm going to nudge that over just a bit. So I'm just taking my keyboard and pressing the right arrow and nudging that. And so now I think that line is where it should be. So we're going to press Shift C and we are going to go into that convert tool to convert that point to a curve. Same thing, going around here and just making that line really nice and pretty. And I move back to A for this white arrow, which lets me select points here, and just refining, manipulating the curves as I go around. In pulling on those handles will shortening and lengthening those handles will manipulate your curve. And like I said, I don't trust my duct tape pattern here 100% for its accuracy. So I'm going to clean up whatever I can here. That way, when I move into the next phase of testing this, I can sort of detail this in a little more, but at least I'll have a really solid pattern that doesn't wiggle around. And so we're going to go around the whole pattern this way on this outline, switching between selecting the points, manipulating the points, then converting those individual points into curves, and then pulling those curves to where they match up over our pattern piece. Next step is going to go ahead and be to draw the darts into the pattern. I'm just going to go ahead and grab the pen tool and start drawing that V shape to match the dart. I'm just going to click near that point, down in the corner, and then back up to the shoulder again. And just refine that. We're also going to go into that pointed edge, and we are going to use that little white circle after we click on the single point. And that little white circle is actually just going to round that single point there into two smaller points that are nice and rounded. And then just manipulate that to be kind of exactly where I want it to be. And clean up anything with the dart legs so it matches the pattern. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and draw in the center line of the dart. I just like to keep this drawn in on my patterns. You don't have to do that. That's something that I do to keep track. I like more drawing rather than less onto my patterns. I figure more doesn't hurt. And then just kind of manipulate these lines. I'm going to go ahead and make these dart lines skinnier. So make them 1 point and make them a different color. I like to color coordinate the different parts of my pattern so it makes them really easy to see whenever I print them out. Now we're going to work on that second dart. Right about there is the center of the bust point. So what I'm going to do is first draw in this dart. Then we're going to rotate it. And what we're trying to do, the reason we're rotating is the way I cut in this dart, I was not really paying much attention to where the bust point is. The darts should all point to that bust point area. And so what I'm going to do is actually just manipulate it here. And to illustrate this, where the bust point is, I'm going to go ahead and put a circle around, and a pretty good size one, around where I believe the bust point is from my dress form. I really should have marked this while it was still on the dress form. I did not. You should do that if you're marking on yours. All right. And so I'm just pointing those legs, that V point at that circle there, which represented my bust point. And I'm just attempting to keep those dart legs in relatively the same spots on the outside and just manipulate that until I think I have that right. And this is something I would definitely have to go back and check in a mock-up. Then we're just going to make the center of the dart. Now we're going to go ahead and do this French dart or long dart that goes through the middle of the body here. And this dart is a bit curved, so we will be making those lines not exactly a point. I'll go ahead and curve them. And this was also another messy opening, the way I did it. And so I'm going to go ahead and clean everything up. I'm going to move the top of that dart to where it looks more correct if I were to be on a sewing pattern. and then manipulate this and just get this looking nice and pretty. And cleaning up those lines. If you have any trouble, you can go ahead and turn that magnet off. That will stop it from clipping to the grid, and then you can go ahead and turn that back on. So I'm going to go ahead and here I am copying the circle there. It's just my cheater's way and making that circle smaller. I like to mark the end point of a dart with a small circle. It's just something that I've been doing on my patterns since I learned pattern making. It makes it easier. I usually use a hole punch and make a little hole punch there. It makes it easier to transfer to my patterns. So I'm just going to put some of those circles around here at the various points of these darts. Shrink up the bust point a little bit and put that pretty much where I think it needs to be. When I do a mock-up, I will actually re-point anything as I go. Here I'm going to draw in a grain line. I know where the grain should be on this, on that center front, because that's the way I want it to. If you're doing a foam pattern, obviously you don't have a grain line. I'm just going to make it a nice bright color, or maybe black. Yeah, black will work. And then I'm going to put arrowheads at each end under the stroke tool here, and that's going to indicate a grain line. Now I'm going to turn off that background so we can see what we have. So here we have what looks like a nifty pattern. Another step that I like to do is just go ahead and clean up anything that's left and start adding text. So the first text I'm going to add is the center front. I'm going to mark that. We could cut that on the fold if we were making a piece that had no seam in the center. If this were, say, a button down top or zippered top, then we would have some sort of lap there. But any way you throw it, always mark your center fronts. And then I'm going to copy and paste that, turn it, and I'm going to mark what pattern this is and what piece of the pattern this is and how many you should cut. So this is a front. I'm going to cut 2, and I don't have a name for this pattern, so it's just going to be called pattern name. You should give it a name. Just cleaning up. That bust point looked a little off. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some lines, copy and paste that, and we're going to be adding this line for lengthening and shortening. So if we needed to go back and make changes to this pattern, these perpendicular lines just make it easier. So removing the arrowheads, cleaning them up, and marking them with what they are, which is a lengthen shorten line. Now we are going to also put the waist line. We can see the waistline on the original pattern with the black line there. And so when we do that waistline, that is also a good place for our lengthen shorten line. And I'm going to put that in the same way as I did the other lengthen shorten line. Now, something really easy to do in Adobe Illustrator when we have our lines very nice and clean is we can figure out the actual waist circumference of the pattern pieces by simply looking at the width of that line there that sits on the waist. And I'm going to go ahead and add a marking for what that width is on this single piece. I'm also going to add a simple calculation on what the waist would be. We're just going to say times 4, only because I pulled this off a dress form and that wouldn't actually be the accurate. But generally speaking, a waist is divided, into 4 parts. We have our front, left, and right, and our back, left. Figure up what 4 times that would be and put that in here to get a general estimation. Now, you would want to measure both your waist front and your waist back and mark that. But this is just an example of how you can utilize your Illustrator here to get different measurements off of your pattern without actually having to get out anything to measure it. Now we're going to go ahead and add a seam allowance. We are going to select the outer line and we are going to go to Object Path, Offset Path. I like to use 1/2 inch. You can use whatever you like. Put that in here. So this is 0.5 inches. And then I'm going to go ahead and set that stroke to 1 and to black. That is how I mark my cutting lines in all my patterns. We're just going to go ahead then and group everything. Make sure we save, and this is ready to become a printable PDF pattern.
Thanks so much for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button so you can get notified when the next video comes out. Thanks so much and happy sewing!